title of this video is User Gap. When you're working in an organisation, you need to solve problems. You need to find out what users need and why. You need to identify the gaps. We've previously talked about identifying the gaps in literature, how to approach that. But to identify user gaps, you actually need to talk to users. So what do you need to think about when you talk to users? Users are very busy people, so it's unlikely you're going to get a lot of their time. And a lot of the time they will have identified that they've got some kind of an issue, but they don't know what they want the solution to look like. The reality is often they know what they don't like as opposed to what they like. So when you produce something, it's not always going to be what they expected or wanted. So that's why you want to ideally produce a number of versions as quickly as possible to give them an idea of what they don't like and to then hone in on what they do like. Let's have a look at how that can possibly work. So there's a sense gap. Somebody has had the idea that there's something missing. There's something that could create an advantage. But then you've got to go through this exercise of defining a problem, figuring out exactly what it is, pinning it down, and it can be very slippery. That can involve exploring alternatives and exploring multiple alternatives until you finally come up with a plan of approach. So exploring that space, diagnosing the needs, doing a capability analysis, looking at a whole lot of different problems, related problems, literature on the problems, seeing if there's existing solutions out there in the research or commercial. All of those things are options. Take your time to define the problem and define it really tightly, and understand that users often don't know what they want. But ultimately you've got to come up with a plan. And if you've got limited time, you may only have one shot to actually build something and take it through to actually figuring out whether it satisfies the needs of the user and closes that gap. Now, users might want something. They don't exactly know what it is, but they'll try and tell you. So they're trying to express something that they're not quite sure what it is because they've never seen it before. Then the designer needs to try and understand those needs. So there's already 2 layers of possible miscommunication. Then somebody needs to develop a solution. So we've got 3 layers of misinterpretation. And that solution may be some distance from the actual ideal point. And you don't want that solution to be too far away. So the faster you can close that gap, the more efficiently you can reduce that distance between the actual artifact and what the user actually wants, the better off you'll be. Let's look at how this typically works. Generally speaking, you define the problem. You test it, you ask a lot of people, you come up with ideas. Let's start this one again. First of all, we start in the middle. We define the problem. We define it as quickly as possible. We then come up with a plan. We develop a prototype, a fast prototype, get it out there, and then we test it. We see if it meets that need. Then we redefine the problem. We put more effort into it. We explore a greater range of options. We come up with the second prototype, and then we do far more extensive testing. Hopefully you only go a few times round, because each time there's a cost in terms of time, money, the users contributing. It becomes increasingly expensive to keep going round and round. So the business case to actually go around this loop multiple times generally has to be fairly strong. So how can you define the problem? Well, there's several techniques for doing this, and I'm going to recommend a few here. First of all, the 5 whys. When you get into a discussion, think 5 whys. You may not always understand what the user is talking about, but you can always ask why. Why is it happening? Why is that? Now, you can go down that path a certain extent, but if you hit something that's outside the control of the user, then you've got to go back a level. But asking those why questions is important. I do need to point out that the question why is a little bit adversarial. What is a safer question? And if you don't want the user to feel like they're being blamed, what questions are safer? What caused that to occur? What was driving that? So be sensitive to your whys as a communicator. Another approach for understanding the user and understanding the problem is something called user stories. This is used extensively in agile design in software as a I want, so that. Talking to users, asking them what is their role, what are they trying to achieve, how does it help? Assemble those stories. These units are tiny and you can put themes together and you can build packages from them, both in terms of products, in terms of projects. Collect those stories. It's really simple to use, and it's great to start a conversation and have a few questions in mind to begin unpacking what a user might have in mind with respect to a design.